Chapter 8, Callum. Do you know what time it is? Mom ranted the moment I set foot through the door. She and I rarely had any other conversation. Sorry, I mumbled. Your dinner's in the oven, dried out and not fit for eating by now. It'll be fine. So where have you been until 10 o'clock at night? Dad surprised me by asking. He didn't usually nag me about coming home late. That was Mom's department. Well, he prompted when I didn't answer. What did he want me to say? Well, I said goodbye to Seffi at the beach almost 2 hours ago, but then I hid in the shadows and followed her home to make sure she got back okay. Then it took me an hour to walk home. Yeah, right. That little snippet of truth would go down like a lead balloon. I was just out walking. I had a lot to think about. And the last part of that was the truth. Are you okay, son? Dad asked. I went down to Heathcroft as soon as I heard what was going on, but the police wouldn't let me in. Why not? I had, quote, no official business on the premises, unquote. Dad couldn't mask the bitterness in his voice. Those rotten, stinking. Jude, not at the dinner table, please, Mom admonished. Glancing at Jude, I saw he had enough anger in him for everyone else around. He was scowling at me like I was the one who'd kept Dad off for the school premises. So how was school? How were your lessons, son? Dad asked quietly. The honest answer or the acceptable one? It was okay, Dad, I fibbed. Once we got into school, it was all right. Except that the teachers had totally ignored us, and the Crosses had used any excuse to bump into us and knock our books on the floor, and even the knots serving in the food hall had made sure they served everyone else in the queue before us. It was fine. You're in there now, Callum. Don't let any dagger swine drive you out, you understand? I understand. Excuse me, Mom rounded on Dad, but when I say I don't want any swearing at the dinner table, that applies to everyone, including you. Sorry, love, Dad said ruefully, winking conspiratorially at us. You were on the telly, Jude told me. So was your friend. The whole world heard what she said. She didn't mean it like that. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Big mistake. She didn't mean it, Jude scoffed. Have you lost your mind? How can you not mean to say something like that? She meant it all right. That family are all the same, Mom sniffed. I see Miss Seffi has grown up just to be like her mother. I had to bite my lip at that. I knew better than to argue. You're better off out of that house, Dad told Mom vehemently. You don't have to tell me twice, Mom agreed at once. I miss the money, but I won't go back for all the stars in space. Anyone who can put up with that stuck-up cow Mrs. Hadley is a better person than me. You were friends once, I reminded her, spooning some totally dried-out mashed potato into my mouth. Friends? We were never friends, Mom retorted. She patronized me, and I put up with it because I needed a job. That's all. That wasn't how I remembered it. A few years ago, and a lifetime away, Mom and Mrs. Hadley had been really close. Mom was Minerva, then Seffi's nanny, and a general mother's helper from the time Minerva was born. In fact, I was closer to Seffi than I'd ever been to anyone, even my own sister Lynette, who was my best friend in this house. I remember when I was a toddler and Seffi was just a baby, I'd help to bathe her and change her nappy. And when she got older, we played hide and seek and catch and tag on the Hadley grounds, while Mom and sometimes Mrs. Hadley watched us and chatted and laughed. I still don't know what happened to change all that. One week, Mrs. Hadley and Mom were like best friends, and the next week, Mom and I were no longer welcome anywhere near the Hadley house. That was over 3 years ago now. I still sometimes wondered how Mrs. Hadley expected Seffi and me to go from being so close to not seeing each other at all. Seffi told her it was impossible. I told my mom the same thing. Neither of them listened. But it didn't matter. Seffi and I still saw each other at least every day, and we never stopped. We promised each other. The most sacred of promises, an oath sealed with our blood. We just wouldn't tell anyone about it, that's all. We had our own world, our own secret place on the beach where no one went and where no one would ever find us, not if they didn't know where to look. It was a small space, tiny really, but it was ours. Shush, everyone, the news is on, Dad admonished. I held my breath. What happened at Heathcroft wasn't the first item in the news. The first item was about the Liberation Militia. Today, Kamal Hadley, Home Office Minister, declared that there would be no hiding place, no safe haven for those not misguided enough to join the Liberation Militia. The newscaster's face disappeared, to be replaced by that of Seffi's dad outside the House of Parliament. His face seemed to fill the whole screen. Isn't it true, Mr. Hadley, that your government's decision to allow selected knots in our schools was a direct result of pressure from the Liberation Militia? Not at all, Seffi's dad immediately denied. The government does not allow itself to be blackmailed by an illegal terrorist group. We acted on a PEC directive that this government had been on the verge of implementing anyway. My dad snorted at that. Our decision to allow the creme de la creme of knot youth to join our educational institutions makes us sound social and economic sense. In a civilized society, equality of education for those knots with sufficient aptitude. I tuned out at that. Seffi's dad hadn't changed since the last time I'd spoken to him, which was ages ago now. He never used one word where 20 patronizing ones would do. I didn't like him much. Correction, pompous twit, I didn't like him at all. I didn't like any of Seffi's family. They were all the same. Minerva was a snob, her mom was a bitch, and her dad was an ass. They all looked at us knots through their nostrils. The Liberation Militia are misguided terrorists, and we will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to bring them to justice. Seffi's dad was still at it. I was about to mentally switch off again, but then Jude did something that brought me out of my daydream. Long live the Liberation Militia. My brother punched the air, his fingers locked in a fist so tight that I reckon it would surely hurt to straighten them again. Too right, son. Dad and Jude exchanged a knowing look before they both turned back to the telly. I frowned at them, then turned to look at Mum. She immediately glanced away. I looked back at Jude and Dad. There was something going on, something to do with the Liberation Militia and my brother and my dad. I didn't mind that. What I did mind was that I was being excluded. There have been unconfirmed reports that car bomb found outside the International Trade Center last month was the work of the Liberation Militia, the newscaster continued. What attempts are being made to find those responsible? I can tell you that our highest priority is to find those responsible and bring them to swift and irrevocable justice. Political terrorism that results in the death or serious injury of even one cross always has been and always will be a capital crime. Those found guilty will suffer the death sentence, no ways about it. Blah, blah, blah. Seffi's dad droned on for at least another minute, not letting the newscaster get a word in edgewise, sideways, or any other ways. I tuned out again, waiting for him to finish, hoping he wouldn't.